Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. As is our tradition, we'll do introductions, go around the room and introduce ourselves. We'll start.
My name is Michael.
My name is Tom.
My name is Gary.
My name is Andre.
Joseph. And Mark.
John.
My name is Mark.
My name is Will.
My name is Harley.
My name is Philip.
My name is Joe.
My name is Lucia.
I'm Carl.
My name is Cass.
I'm David.
Tony.
I'm Amos.
I'm Jack.
I'm Mark.
I'm Brian.
I'm Tom.
I'm Ed.
My name is Tage.
My name is Brian. My name is Jerry. Jeff.
Marco.
My name is Dal.
Jay.
George.
Gary.
Bernard.
Peter.
Paul.
My name is Jess.
So, today we're fortunate to have with us Dorothy Hunt, who's going to talk to us about identities. Currently, she serves as the spiritual director of Moon Mountain Sangha and teaches in the lineage of Adyashanti. She's the founder of the San Francisco Center for Meditation and Psychotherapy and has practiced psychotherapy since 1967. She is the author of Only This and has contributed to many things and was featured in a book called Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Wisdom. So, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. If we just skip one, it was Peter, Paul, and Jerry. I really could be a new trio that's coming up. Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. I spoke once to your group many years ago, but it's really a lovely thing to be back, and appreciate you all coming out this morning. So when Jim and I were talking on the phone, he suggested perhaps something that he was interested in looking into, the nature of personal identity. And so for me, it kind of blossomed into a bigger question of identity in general, because perhaps some of you in that meditation without memory had a moment or more than one moment of everything just falling away in the sense of how you usually identify yourselves. You know, if we don't go to memory, who are we? What are we? And yet, something's awake. Something's awake. Something's been awake in every single one of us from the get-go. Awake to every experience of pain, every experience of joy. Something's felt like a continuous identity, hasn't it? Because you have memories from when you were a child, an adolescent, yesterday. Some of us have very few, or at least they're becoming fewer, let's say, as older I get. But it's not just a matter of letting go of memory, because memory is here for a reason. It's functional. But there's an incredible attachment to it. And just as he was reading various things supposedly about me, lots of identities there. You know, teacher, therapist, author, la la la. We went around, lots of identities, and just in terms of our name, our name. So we live this conditioned life, don't we? We all are conditioned. We're conditioned from the get-go. We have a genome completely and utterly unique to each one of us. There's an identity there. On the genetic level, there's an identity on an atomic and a subatomic level. There's an identity on a personal level, a national level, a cultural level, planetary level, galactic. We belong to a certain solar system. We could go on and on and on out, or we could go on and on and on in. And we might say there's some kind of identity in every single aspect of our conditioned lives. Identity is not really a problem in terms of continuing to feel like we're separate from our true nature, separate from our Buddha nature, separate from one another, separate from life. It's the attachment, this incredible emotional attachment that we have to these ways of defining ourselves. And I just thought I'd talk a little bit about a few things: personality, conditioning, ego, identity, those kind of things. If you've ever spent any time with new babies, there's a personality from the get-go. Personality is not an identity. It's here from the beginning. I have 3 little grandsons, 10, 3, and one just turned 1 yesterday. We went to the birthday party. Each one of these little boys came out with a personality of sorts, from the get-go. And you can feel it energetically. Some babies are just like, whoa, into the world, passionate, and others are much more, not sure, want to be here, That energy is there from the beginning in certain ways. But then, as happens, I was present for the birth of my oldest grandson, who's 10, and in the delivery room, everyone who was there was about 6 of us, relatives around, everyone started identifying something about this baby from the moment he was born. Oh, he's so cute, he's so strong, he's so smart, I realized anyway, you could say, you're a monkey, and it would just be another thing that's kind of put on, right? And of course, happily for him, in those very, very early days, he had no idea what we were talking about. But there was, and there is, and we all know, there is an energy and a flavor that begins to become more and more a part of our lives, don't they, as we grow up. And we don't know originally that we're supposed to be the face in the mirror. When the baby gets old enough to know there's a baby, it's a baby in the mirror. It's not a me in the mirror. There's an object in the mirror. It's not me, not yet, And when the little guy says, Johnny wants a cookie, it's actually a little more accurate than I want a cookie on some levels, because there's a sense of being an object in your own awareness, we might say. Being an object in your own awareness, in your own awakeness. And then, we collect, don't we? We collect all kinds of identities through our conditioning. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. And we believe the mirrors, early on, we believe the mirrors of what is being reflected back to us. You're a good boy, you're a naughty boy, you're a smart boy, you're an athletic boy, you're not an athletic boy, etc., etc., etc. And pretty soon we begin to believe that's actually who we are. All of that host of ideas about ourselves. Ideas, thoughts. But those thoughts, some of which are powerful, profound, they create an emotional reaction, don't they? They create an emotion that's attached. If I believe the thought that, fill in the blank, then I'm going to have an emotional reaction to that thought. If I believe I'm worthless, if I believe I'm the best thing to happen to the world since sliced bread, whichever way we go, there's going to be an emotional response. So then, let's just fast forward. I don't need to spend much more time on the truth of conditioning. We all know that. But now we become interested, perhaps, in the spiritual life. Whether it's called Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish or Christian, whatever it is, or no name at all. And particularly in the Buddhist tradition, we hear about no self. So now we have a self concept that's trying to become a no self. How do I get rid of ego, we say? You know, I've got to kill this ego. This is the problem between me and my Buddha nature. What is ego? What is this thing that so many of us think we have to get rid of? What is it really? Ego. Is there such a thing? We use that term. Can you present an ego to me? Anybody? It's a movement of mind, isn't it? It's a movement of mind that claims experience for some idea of a separate self, of a separate me. The fact that this is arising in our consciousness, whatever emotion, thought, conditioned thought, that's the proof that there's an ego. But when we wake up, when we truly wake up, whether it's for an instant or for a lifetime, when we truly wake up to our true nature, we'll call it Buddha nature here at the Buddhist Fellowship. When we call it anything, it's not the thing that we call it. It's this experience of, we can't really say, but you know it. You know it when you have those moments of being awake. You know you're not who you thought you were. You're not what you thought you were. You know, it could just be an instant. Or it could be much longer that experience of being more and being less than we thought we were. You know, but when we wake up, we realize there's no one to awaken. Now that falls in the face of everything our mind imagined. Well, I'm going to wake up. That's why I'm doing my spiritual practice. That's why I'm sitting and meditating every day or once a week or once a month. That's why I'm doing it, because I'm going to be the one who awakens. But when we awaken, we realize there's no one to awaken, because there's nothing separate. There's nothing separate from this. What can we say is this? I can't tell you. We can use words for this that's awake, that's present, this moment, to the sound of my voice, to your own thoughts, to your sensations, to your hungry stomach or your full belly or whatever. There's something that's awake here. The fact of the matter is that this that's awake is actually moving as everything. There's not a single experience that we've ever had that we could have without this awakeness, without this awareness. It's so intimate and so much a part of our everyday lives, and so much something we take for granted. We don't even imagine the unbelievable mystery or magic almost of this that's awake in you and I. This that's awake doesn't have a separate identity, even though it has a million forms, infinite forms, including each one of our forms. But it sees itself. When it looks in your eyes, it sees itself. This that's awake is what's looking, what's listening, what's feeling, and yet more than that and less than that. So Douglas Harding, whose little experiment was part of that meditation without memory, when he was about 16 years old, I think, or maybe he was a little older, he recognized, he was just standing and he recognized he actually had no head. He could see his shoulders, he could see the world, but he couldn't see a head. He was a wonderful man. I met him on many occasions. He did some workshops at our center. I think he taught till he was about 95 years old. You know, he was a Brit, sparkling blue eyes, a really lovely man. But he came up with these experiments because once he found out he had no head, it was like he realized that he wasn't the reflection that everyone else had. Those were their ideas about him. But who he was simply what was looking out. He was the seeing. You see? The seeing itself. And what is seen can't be separated from the seeing. We're trained that it can be, but if you look experientially, there's no way my awareness is separate from seeing this form. We can't really pull them apart except by a thought. So you begin to feel, when you really investigate your experience in this way, that really you're not separate. This that's awake in you is not separate. Now, if becoming awakened and living from that were as easy as, losing your memory, then everyone with Alzheimer's would be supremely enlightened with it. So it's not just about not having a memory, as that little meditation was pointing to something beyond all the ways we identify ourselves. But there's a way in which we begin to see, once we've had a taste of awakening in any moment really, we begin to see more and more how we keep ourselves unenlightened, how we keep ourselves separate. And this is much of the process after we've had some kind of awakening. It's a lot about looking into conditioning, looking into the movement of mind that we call ego. Really, ego is a verb. It's not a thing. There's nothing solid called ego. It's a movement of mind that says, this is mine, and that's not mine, and this is me, and that's not me, and so forth and so on. Now, initially, a sense of self is it's a natural phenomenon, and we need it. Do you know which mother is mine? Which stomach is hungry? The sense of self is an operational necessity. We don't have to make that wrong in any way. But what we begin to look into, from a perspective of more awakeness, is just how attached emotionally we are to these various identities, and to these various addictions that we all have. All of us have addictions. The most common ones would include, anyway, the addiction to comfort. Now, aren't we all addicted to comfort? I'm sitting on this chair instead of the cushion because I'm addicted to comfort for this body. We're addicted to thought. Most of all. That's the biggest addiction that we all have. Not because thought is wrong or we need to get rid of thought, but we are attached. We're attached to our thoughts. These thoughts include judgments, don't they? They include expectations. They include all the things that we encounter in our daily life that make us say, this shouldn't be, and this should be. I shouldn't be this way, I should be that way, and so forth and so on. Just on and on and on. Do we even stop to look at how much energy we spend every single day believing our thoughts? And see, the idea that the thoughts are here, that in itself is not a problem. When you're actually residing in this deep place of awakeness, it's here in each of us, as each of us. Thought doesn't interrupt that. But as soon as something, the energy of attachment reaches up and grabs that thought, and let's face it, we don't want to let go of them, do we? We do not want to let go of these judgments that have been deeply conditioned. I was at a restaurant the other day with my husband, and it seemed like everyone around us had gotten their food, even people who came later. You know how that is? And then there's this little thing inside that's like, so kind of innocently, I said, which of our orders, yours or mine, do you think that they didn't have and they had to go, figure it out, cook it, go buy it, whatever it was. A little sarcastic there, but nonetheless. And then, you see, the fact that it happened wasn't so much an issue, but there was something then that saw And this is what I would invite all of us to do. This is part of the deep embodiment of what we are, is to continually want to see the ways that we separate ourselves from the moment. So something came up in that moment, and then I said to my husband, you know, that comment I just made was coming right out of an expectation that life should be different than this moment, that it should look a certain way. Now see, there's no judgment, oh, you shouldn't have had that thought. At least there wasn't any judgment here. I would encourage you to come to that place where you're not judging yourself. Because that's the only way we see clearly. If we're judging ourselves, now we're into the energy of self-judgment. But when we're not, we actually have the opportunity to see clearly how attached we are, how much we believe certain of our thoughts. You should, and you shouldn't. This should be how it is, and this shouldn't be the way it is, but here it is. What are we going to do with that? It's reality, isn't it? It's reality. It says nothing about the next moment. The mind will say, if I accept this moment as what is, well then the next whatever is going to be terrible. We're not talking about the next. We're talking about actually being here for this moment, for this experience, for this one. Are we awake to this one? See, the issue isn't, did I have an awakening when I was 16 or 10 years ago or 5 minutes ago or at the last retreat? That's actually kind of, it's not irrelevant because it's an incredibly powerful thing to have that. But it's only step one, we could say. I mean, a more important question is what's here now? Am I awake to this moment? Or am I caught in this virtual reality of my thinking mind that imagines its thoughts are actually truth? There's no thought that's truth. Some are more helpful than others, some are truer than others, we might say. But what if we actually began to just see the moment from this awake in us? Without necessarily, we're not trying to exclude anything. You know, judgment may arise. Desire to attach may arise. But you see, when we're not looking from a place of I should look a certain way and I shouldn't look another way, we actually have the opportunity to clearly see what's happening in our own minds, how our own minds work, how much we're attached to this view, how we separate ourselves. We do it on a constant, we do it on a daily, just even gay Buddhist fellowship. There's several divisions there, if you wanted them to be. Now, they don't have to be, but how we divide ourselves, Democrat, Republican. Ooh, that's a big one. Various religions, various ethnicities, various races. Now, I speak of this not because I say you shouldn't have those views, but only to look and see that they're there, number one, become more and more precise and clear about what your attachments are that keep you divided. And secondly, being willing to experience what's here when we're not using our usual strategies to get away from the moment. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? It's like there's an experience, like there's a reactivity, right? Let's just say we're angry. That's an easy one. Somebody cuts us off on the freeway. We'll make it easy. They shouldn't do that. Boom. So can we look in that moment? What's the belief that I'm holding in this moment? See, what's the belief I'm holding in this moment? Well, there's a belief he or she shouldn't have done that. But they just did. But still, I'm holding on tightly to the belief they shouldn't have. And I'm angry. I'm angry about it. But can I experience that? And what are the layers of that? Really? What's if we just really let the experience take hold? Not the story about it. First is learning what the story is. The second piece, though, that's more important is the willingness to have the experiential moment, because if we're really willing to feel into the energy of anger, for instance, and is there something underneath that? It's fear. In this moment, wasn't it? There was a fear for my life, we could say. This could have been an accident. This could have, there was a lot of what ifs in that. Can we come into the fear? Or you'll find whatever you'll find, but the willingness, I guess the point I want to make is just the willingness to investigate experientially the moment, not the ideas about it. It's so easy to think about it, to read about it, to have workshops about it, about where we're stuck in this conceptual framework, this virtual reality that we all live in, But when we're willing to have the experience, we can begin to see our attachments, how pervasive they are, our conditioning, how it affects every moment if we're not aware, and so forth and so on. How are we doing? Because I want to have time just to talk back and forth. I don't know if there's anything more to say. It feels like, I was talking about addictions, and I think maybe I'll just add a few more, and then we'll kind of open it up. So comfort and thought, we got that far, didn't we? Judgment, that was a piece of that one too. The emotional content of our life. Some of us think our thoughts are what is most true. Some of us think our feelings are what are most true. But there again, are we willing to look and see? I'm feeling this. It feels so real and so personal and so, so much the truth of the moment that we don't even realize that the feeling has been generated by the idea that we've been holding, maybe unconsciously, that you should be different, or that life should look this way, or whatever it is, The emotional attachment to who we are. If that identity, and there's lots of identities, but if that identity is threatened, then what? There's an emotional reaction, isn't there, to that idea that who I am has been threatened. And that's why when we find out who we truly are beneath all of these ways that we continually identify ourselves as separate, the question is, can that be threatened? Can this essence, the Buddha nature, can it actually be threatened? We've all protected our hearts in whatever ways we have, haven't we? And usually it starts really early, and usually there's a sense, even though we're not conscious of it, that there's something really precious, and therefore it has to be protected. And then we never get around to asking, when we have the consciousness to ask, does it actually need protection? Does love need protection, for instance? Does the heart really, the true heart, does it really need protection? I'm spending a lot of my life trying to protect it, but what's inside? Does it actually need protection? Are we willing to look into the matter? Not take anybody's word for it, but as the Buddha says, be a lamp unto yourself. Be a lamp each time. So we're attached to our emotional reactions, we're attached to identities, aren't we? We're attached to fear. Oh my God. We may not even know it until fear begins to loosen up a little bit. Just how much of our life that we've devoted to trying to find strategies to deal with fear. Fear of being rejected. Therefore, I'll try to please everybody, right? Fear of chaos. Now I'm going to have everything ordered, so I'll never have to face chaos. Fear of all kinds of things. Fear of loneliness, longing. So I'm going to stay really busy. There's nothing wrong with any of the ways that life is moving, but are you interested, really, in being awake to what is? Because what you'll discover, and what we all discover in ways that humble us, like, oh my God, that too. And who wants to look into this stuff? Not very many of us, really. I don't want to see all that stuff. Mostly because we've imagined it's about a me. But see, that stuff is not about a me. That stuff may be conditioning. That stuff may be just how the moment came together from all the causes and conditions from so far back and forward, we have no idea all the causes and conditions that create this moment to be exactly as it is. But you see, to see that that's what happens, there's nobody to blame, and there's no one, whether it's yourself or others, there's no one to shame and there's no one to blame. And boy, is that a hard one. Because don't we want to? Don't we want to blame? Some of us are more into shame and some of us more into blame, but they're kind of, going together, go together. But what if, you see, the moment just is arising? This is just arising. And yet you have the capacity for clear seeing, for really clearly seeing. Not in an analytic way. We're not talking about some kind of psychoanalytic thingy. We're talking about just the willingness to see as clearly as we can when we're hooked, when we're stuck, when we can feel it. Our bodies will tell us when we're operating out of separation because it doesn't feel good. It's not a judgment, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, because then we're not available to see. But there's just a desire as this process called awakening and embodying of that awakening, as that process continues, there's actually not just a willingness to see, there's this desire to see. I want to see. I want to leave the door open because I want to know how I continue to unenlighten myself. We can't really attain or gain enlightenment. It's what we are. It's the totality. It's the reality that we can't really, we can't define. It's this moment if we have eyes to see it. But we can see how we hold ourselves away, how we imagine, oh, that couldn't be true for me. I couldn't be awake. How many ideas do we have about that? Well, I haven't been 30 years on my cushion facing the wall, and therefore couldn't possibly be. I haven't done enough. I'm not spiritual enough. I'm too attached to this, that, or the other thing. Couldn't be. But you're awake. We are all awake. We may not know it consciously. But this that's awake is operating continually. Every moment. And it's bigger than a me. It's not about a me. And yet, it has this incredible love for itself. That's the amazing thing. It has this incredible love and compassion for its own expression, of which everything is. So I think I've blah, blah, blah long enough. I'd rather kind of have dialogue with you guys and see what you want to talk about, what's come up for you. Yes?
Who has gratitude?
Gratitude has gratitude.
Gratitude. So it just arises and has
And it feels to me like gratitude is the natural response to knowing what we are. It's the natural response to a moment of awe. There's no one to thank, and yet thanking happens. Yeah. First year, not come back.
If it's such a bitch, why do we want to be enlightened?
There's nothing in it for me. If people talked about that straight up, who'd be sitting here meditating? It's like, whoa. There's nothing in it for me. But there's freedom. There's freedom from the me. And that's an incredible freedom. That's an incredible freedom. And as it seems to move itself, we could say, more and more into the body-mind organism, there's just a natural upwelling of wisdom and compassion. We say some people come, most people come to the spiritual life because they think that it will mean the end of suffering. Very few people at least in my experience, are really interested in the truth. They're interested in something about me. How can I be more loved or suffer less or something? It's about a me. And then we get into it, and we're going along, and we're doing this thing, and we're listening to talks like this, and blah blah blah. And then it occurs to us, we've been trying to search for something, and then whoa, it seems like it's turning around. Now it's coming after the me. It's coming after this idea of me. Oh my God, what am I going to do about that? And we can resist it for a really long time. We can be, no, I'd really rather hold on to my judgment than be happy. I'd really rather continue to feel like I'm right and all the rest of them are wrong than I would to feel a sense of equanimity about life as it is. I really would rather do that. Be honest with yourselves. Because that's actually what begins to liberate, is just that clear seeing. It's not about changing yourself. It's not about a self-improvement project. That's why it's really not a kind of therapy, even though I think meditation is one of the best psychotherapies there is. But it's not that kind of therapy about trying to change, trying to self-improve and all of that. It's not that. It's a clear seeing and the willingness to be open to what actually is. And there's something that's really sweet and loving about that. But the journey is different for each one of us, so-called journey. It's really a journey back to now. And so, you think, well, why don't I just stay here now? I could save myself a lot of time, a lot of trips to India and so forth. If I'd just be here now. Ram Dass said that long ago. Some of you are old enough to remember when that book came out, as am I, Be here now. We don't want to be here now, do we? We want to be on our search. We want to be there. We don't want to be here. Yeah, but I'm suffering now. That's why I want to be there. But what if we actually let ourselves be awake to the suffering now? To what's actually here? And when we unwind these conditionings and attachments and so forth, like all the way back, and we're not always ready to do that, so it's not about a should, but it feels like it comes back to a fear of not being who we thought we were, not being the identity that we've held on to for a sense of safety and security. And at some point, if we're serious about this thing called truth, we're going to be face to face with that. And, there'll come a time where, you just have to say, okay, if it kills me, it kills me. But I have to know. We face the unknown, and the mind doesn't like facing the unknown ever. It would rather know itself as a suffering creep, than it would face the unknown, or as a spiritual seeker. Now that is a big identity, isn't it? We can keep on that one for our whole lives. Never get out of that. Never get out of that. It's so egocentric, isn't it, for the spiritual ego to be a spiritual seeker. But what if you just stop? Is there anything to seek when you just stop? Or is there just what's here? And just what's here is so much more and so much less than we imagine. Let me get back to you.
So, thank you for a very illuminating talk.
Quite welcome.
So I'm really interested in this interaction or this correlation between our fear and the need for comfort and the amount of time and effort we spend in anticipation of the next moment. How much time we spend out of the now because we're worried about our fears and being comfortable in the next moment and all that. And how to find how to examine what's an appropriate balance. So when I got pulled over by a highway patrolman and reached for my wallet under my seat, I apparently set off a fear in him
because
Yes.
he, had his gun pointed at me. So for him, that's a very
Probably
appropriate.
fear both ways at that point, huh?
Yeah, well, he has
Yeah.
to spend a lot of time in anticipation of what might happen next
Yes.
every moment, every
Yes.
emotion.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
for someone else, they don't need that high level of.
Yeah, the conditioning's been different.
So how do we, in our daily lives, how do we examine and maybe look at where an appropriate balance is? Like you said, if I could just stay here now, well, you got to cook dinner at some point. You got to buy the groceries.
Of course.
For dinner later and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And the now doesn't exclude planning. It doesn't exclude planning. Clearly, if I want to have something to live on when I'm retired, I probably should plan a little bit how to save a little money for that. Or like you say, if I want to have dinner, I need to go to the grocery store and get something, and so forth. I don't think we figure it out as a mental thing. How do I? Part of it feels like is the deep acceptance of how you are conditioned. Do you know? If I'm a black man, I have probably been stopped. We've all been listening to the dialogue about that, and we don't have any here. But if I'm a black man, I probably have a very different sense of what I need to be alert to than if I'm a white woman walking around in the marina or something like that. Do you know? Like it's going to be a very different kind of conditioning, based on that. But the question, I think, first and foremost, it gets back to how we started. Who or what am I really? Because from that place, then we can examine the moment. We can be awake to the moment. It's not a figuring out how should I spend more time here and less time there. It's what does the moment dictate? In that case, the moment dictated whatever it did, didn't, just my wallet, sir, or however you responded. Do you know? But it's the willingness not to know, and that's what makes it feel so insecure to the mind. It's a living from not knowing. Because if we're honest with ourselves, any of us, we don't know the next moment, do we? I mean, there could be an earthquake. Those bricks would come. Who knows? I hope not. But, it's not known. And the how to respond, you see, is back into the mental idea of there's a right way to do it. There's a right way to be. And from my perspective anyway, the Buddhist right view simply means the view from awakeness. The view from what you truly are. And that's going to dictate your responsiveness to the moment. And if I think I have to figure out ahead of time, I'm actually less able to be responsive. But it really takes a lot of, I want to say courage for the mind, because the mind doesn't, just like me giving a talk here and not knowing what I'm going to say ahead of time, I've done it enough now that the courage thing kind of doesn't come up too often. But in the beginning, when I would do these things, it was like, what if nothing comes out? What if I have nothing to say? Do you know? One retreat, I didn't have anything to say. It was the best 2-hour meditation we ever had. Anyway, does that kind of...
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about maybe what we're protecting doesn't mean protecting.
Yeah. And the need to know in order to control. That's why we think we need to know in order to control. Who's the controller? See, eventually we have to get back to that very anxious feeling of being helpless, knowing that we're not in control of the world. We're probably not even in control of the next moment, if we're honest. We don't have to live in fear about it, but just see that it's the truth, Impermanence is a truth, it's not. Yeah.
I thank you. I really appreciated the guided piece as an experiential part of this, sort of naked awareness, and not importing memories was really, really a great way I found working with that. And I was really struck at the one, once we got our body, we're on our toes, what's the interface that interacts with the world?
Yeah, yeah.
And at that point, I felt extremely small and naked before God and
absolutely,
everyone, right?
yes.
But
yes.
it occurred to me while you were answering these questions, that is also have that kind of presence of mind, that kind of courage, allows us. It's also very big. It's because it can draw from a very deep well of things. But that's
exactly. We have
scary.
to find that out. Yeah, it is scary. It is scary to the mind that's conditioned to think its safety and security depends on knowing.
Yeah.
You bet.
And we have to protect it.
Yes. Yeah, you bet. And there's no way to find out that you can trust, quote, trust, because it's not really an it, but that you can trust the movement of life until we let go and see what happens, you know. And then trusting the movement of life doesn't mean necessarily that life is going to be the way we want it to be. Do you know? To the extent we see Jesus as a pretty awakened guy, his life didn't exactly turn out, the way he might have wanted it. And his very humanness in those moments, please, if it's possible, take this cup from me. Do you know? It's just like a very human response. Please, officer, don't shoot. Do you know? I mean, it's like we can't make our humanity an enemy.
Just be loving for it.
Exactly. It's a loving awareness. But it is a feeling of being naked.
Yeah.
When we're, and that's what mostly we want to avoid. So we put a lot of clothes on, don't we? We put a lot of clothes on the emptiness. A lot of clothes. I think you had your hand up. Did you? Yeah.
I was just thinking about change in the context of this. Is there any effort that's useful to change yourself or the world?
There is. See.
What?
Clearly see. If I ask you, any of you, right now, let's just do this. Okay, like a little experiment. Just let yourself become aware of what's happening in your body right now, where you might have tension, with absolutely no agenda to change it. Just let yourself be aware, without any idea that you should do anything to change it. What happens when you just become aware of it?
It
softens. It's just a natural. There's a natural transformation that comes from seeing, from clear seeing. Now, sometimes there's effort involved, and the effort is mostly being willing. The mind being willing to let this seeing see.
So, how about clear seeing and issues of social justice and all that? It has to be a seeing and action, right?
Right, sure. But what I would say about that is, where is your action coming from? Because action that's coming from our true nature is not divided in any way. It's not divided from itself, and it's not divided from, the apparent other, because we haven't seen it that there's an other. So it's like, I remember reading about, I wasn't there, a peace march that Thich Nhat Hanh did in LA many years ago, and there were all these, anti-war people there, no war, no more war, blah, 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 blah. And then there are these thousands of people marching by his instruction to walk in peace, from peace. Do you remember reading that? And apparently, all this, everyone kind of got quiet. There was a powerful statement being made and a powerful invitation, but it was not coming from being divided from the anti-war folk. Or the pro-war, if there is such a thing. I guess there's a lot of pro-war in this world, isn't there? So it's like, how does this enlightenment, how does this awakeness want to move in you? And then we're not comparing ourselves to Ramana or the Buddha or Jesus or your spiritual teacher or whoever. We're actually being willing to be that lamp in ourselves, but with incredible honesty, self-honesty. Radical honesty. I mean, that's that naked thing again, it's just like, it's a radical honesty but no judgment. That's the kicker, no judgment. Yeah, Lucia.
So there's a lot of willingness I've noticed in myself to see and be present to a number, more and more in my life, I should say, more and more things.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a couple things like, no way, you can't make it.
Right.
I don't want to do this. And there's stress in that and anxiety, and yet on the other side there's fear of letting it go.
So that's the opportunity. See, I mean, our practice is with life as it is in front of us. That's the path. So you come up against this resistance. That's the place of practice, or that's the place of looking. That's the place of being, right there. What does this resistance feel like? What's the belief I have about it? If I let go of this judgment, let's just say, if I let go of this judgment, then that's going to let this guy off the hook. I don't want to let him off the hook. He did something wrong. I will not. I will have to hold him responsible, in a way that makes me divided. I'm not saying people who commit crime shouldn't be separated from society that they could harm. I'm not talking about not having some societal rules and regulations and so forth. But when we come up in ourselves to these places of resistance, instead of trying to force it open, make it change, can we actually get more curious about it? Do you know? Because if anything, our true nature, when it comes up against a place of unconsciousness, it wants to liberate itself. It wants to understand what hasn't been understood. It wants to love what hasn't been loved. And it wants to liberate what's still imprisoned in this false sense of separation. So there's something holding on for dear life.
It's fear.
It's fear. Yeah, exactly. So can we get to know the territory of fear? Now, who wants to do that? Once again, can we really admit to ourselves, geez, I'm not too interested in this thing called fear, really. But I do want to be liberated from it. Okay, so which is more important? Are we willing to look into it? Not to get rid of it, but to know the territory. So you get curious about resistance, and you get curious about the physical sensation of the present moment when it's here. Do you know? Mostly we're just trying to run from it. But sooner or later, we're going to be invited by life itself to be present to whatever hasn't been liberated. It's a pretty thorough thing, looking at how everything is an inside job. Everything's an inside job. We don't want to think about it that way. No, you caused me to feel this way. You did it.
What about when it's something ancient, like fears that go way back, decades and decades and decades?
What about it?
It just feels.
We're all carrying ancient fear. It's called human conditioning. There's an ancient fear there of being what would we be if we weren't separate from each other? My God, I might have to love my enemy. I might have to stop blaming. I might have to see life as whole and not separate. I might have to see that this whole thing is just the unfolding as a single, undivided wholeness of life, I might have to see that karma is playing itself out whether I want it to or not. I might have to see a lot of things that my mind thinks would really leave it in that very ungrounded place. I'd have to go back to a groundless ground. Now what am I? Now what is this?
The last question.
Last one. You're it.
Okay. I'm not sure this is a question, but I have been thinking about the notion of being sort of self-expressed, and I know I'm using the word self, but let's just say fully expressed.
Yeah. We get to be a full human.
But I also, and the notion of being gay, the notion of being conditioned, how we are in life, or how I've been conditioned, and how do I, where am I in this world? And I'm using the word I and self, but equals.
Sure.
But I just, I feel like for myself every day I conduct my life, I am very aware of being aware of my own self-expression, because I don't know how other people will react. So, for example, my boyfriend and I, he lives in Marin County, he and I will not go out hand in hand. He does not feel comfortable. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know how people are going to react to him or to us. This morning before I came here, there was a transsexual who was brutally murdered in Jamaica. I read about this. Someone who's sitting there just being himself.
Just being himself.
Being himself. And so part of me wants to just sort of state, this is Gay Buddhist Fellowship, and there is a way that, our own conditioning and who we've been and how we have to be in this world, and yet, and I don't want to go on about that, but so I just, if you could maybe react to that.
Well, when you're in nature and you see a deer being very, whatever, ready to go, very alert, we could say, very whatever to what is perceived as a possible danger, we don't judge it, do we?
No.
That's where we come to. We don't judge it. We don't judge that conditioning. But there's an interest in it. There's a curiosity, for instance, with your boyfriend. What's the fear, really? What's the fear? Can we just be with the fear, with compassion, with love, with, openness? Not, it shouldn't be here. There's a reason it's here. Do you know? For all of us. Do you know? So it feels like it's that combination of kind of unconditional acceptance of our humanity and the conditioning that we all have had, however we've had it, be we gay, straight, black, white, whatever. And the willingness to look at whatever is dividing us from the perspective of what's awake and undivided. So it's just because it feels like, let's say this is fear, when we actually invite, even, we don't have to invite, but as a term of speech, awareness to be inside of that fear, rather than, the mind's trying to pull it apart or hold on for dear life. But awareness actually just moves inside and begins to open just by the clear seeing we were talking about, just by, do you know? And then it isn't a matter of it should or shouldn't be this way. I think, how many of us have an idea of spiritual awakening will mean I will never be afraid. Or I certainly will never be afraid of death. And I just want to pose a question to you, could you just find out for yourself if that's what it means, rather than assuming? Because at least here, what I never ever thought would be the liberation is the liberation for the moment to be what it is. I always thought it would be when it looked some other way. Don't we think that? So it's kind of like, if there's fear, well then we'll have the experience of fear. And the more we're not refusing this experience in order to hold on to another one, the less power it has. Do you know? But it isn't because we're trying to pry ourselves out of a place. It's more like, and I bring this unconditional love and clear seeing right into it. So I say, bless all of you wherever you are on the so-called journey, and the moment that you find yourself in. May we all awaken together more and more deeply. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, announcements. Let me make the first one, actually. Next week, we have one of our own members, Prasad Chida, Dharmachari. He's an ordained member of the Tiratra Buddhist community. You've probably seen him here at the GBF gatherings. teaches various yoga, meditation, and Buddhist practices here at the center, and likes to study the link between ideals and inspiring guides and how they manifest imperfectly, that relationship. So that's next week. Do we have announcements?
I have flyers today for a workshop series, a class series called Embodied Storytelling for Men. And it's being taught through Interplay in Oakland. It combines movement, storytelling, vocalization, and play. It's a lot of fun, and I'd be happy to talk with you about it during the social time. I found Interplay to be a wonderful way for me to bring myself back into the present and connect with other people in my own body, and so I'd be happy to talk about it with you.
Sure.
Hi. The GDF retreat is September 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It is filled, but I am taking names for a waiting list. If you're interested, see me at the after this.
Hello, my name is Harley, and I have two things real quick, I hope. In October, I'm going to be going on another journey to Asia, to Taiwan, Burma, Myanmar, and Laos, with a short stop in Thailand. So I just put it out there if anybody has been there or has friends, relatives, or knows anything about it that could help. I'm networking, so please to give me a little hello. Secondly, I connected with this man in Taiwan, in Taipei, and I'm going to be there for the Gay Pride Parade. And he asked me to march with them in their gay Buddhist contingent. So I'm anxious to do that. And he also asked me to come talk to their Sangha, which meets every Saturday evening. They don't have, I don't know what it's going to be like, but, and again, they're so tech savvy, he also asked me to bring a slideshow. So as I'm just here, this is such a powerful image of our Sangha. I would like to request, if possible, just to take 2 quick snapshots to share with them. It wouldn't be on social network, it wouldn't be on an email, it's not going to be on the internet, it would just be in my laptop to share with them about our Sangha. And if anybody feels uncomfortable, to either turn your head or step out, or I could Photoshop you out. I mean, but
Photoshop you.
And this camera is not very good, so we won't have detail. So
Probably would it be better if you did it while we were in circle?
this is just seems really cool, if you don't mind. And I'm just going to take 2 shots with it's such a big group here, with maybe 2 with out flash and 2 with flash, because it's such a powerful group we have here. And I know they're going to be so pleased. Now I'm just going to take it with the flash, see what happens. This isn't like a real camera, but
Those are great.
no? Sorry.
That's great.
Okay.
We need to move along here.
And also, hopefully, I'll be able to, next springtime, be able to share with you the Taipei Gay Sangha, as well as people that I meet in Burma and in...
I'm impressed he can talk while taking a picture of you. Wow.
Thank you.
Next week, Bill Childs, Philip Prince, and I are singing with the San Francisco Choral Society in a fabulous set of performances of Haydn's The Seasons. If you don't know Haydn's music, it's a great demonstration of why he is one of the Mississippi River of Western music. He invented symphonic form, sonata form, trio form, and was the hired musician for a rich family off in the wilds of Hungary. So he was off the beaten path, so he had to invent everything himself. And it's just, this piece is just an encyclopedia musical ideas, and it's a very lusty sort of pagan hymn to nature. Next weekend in Calgary, and there are flyers out there.
I'm Cass. I'm your host today. Please stay and enjoy the fellowship of the Sangha. There's some fruit and cookies if you want to indulge your addiction to sugar. There's hot water for tea. If you have tea, please wash your cup with hot soapy water. I'll be coming around with the Donna Bowl. If you'd like to contribute to help the Sangha meet its expenses, $5 to $8 is suggested donation, but whatever you feel moved would be appreciated. Some people gather at the front door around 12:30 for an informal lunch, and anybody's welcome to join that. So just show up at the front door around 12:30. And there's a sign-up sheet if you'd like to be on our mailing list.
I wanted to announce that I have a workshop coming up on August 25th. It's Sunday from 5 to 7 in Oakland. It's called Everybody Can Dance. And it's a lot of fun. I'm a trained dancer and a dance therapist, and it's really fun. And I have flyers out there.
So you have flyers also.
I do have flyers. I'll be speaking in Oakland for Open Circle on Thursday evening, and then I'm doing two series of 6 workshops, one in San Francisco and one in Oakland this fall, on the subject, in a sense, of what I was talking about today. But the title is Being Awake, Being Hooked. How truth keeps knocking on the door of separation. So anyway, there are flyers out there for satsangs that I do regularly here if you wanted to be on the mailing list to get a newsletter.
Another thing? Okay, I'd like to re-welcome our newcomers and invite you to join us afterwards. And thank you again, Dorothy.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So we form a circle and keep the narrative. Thank you for your practice. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all others.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.